Welcome everyone to another Design Ops Online podcast. Today's show, we are going to be delving into different software in the design industry. And I am glad that, Jack, we've been trying to plan this for a very long time, haven't we,
Yeah,
to
it's
get
been
this talk?
months now.
Yeah, it's been a few months that we've been trying to get this podcast up and rolling, and I'm glad that Jack is here. Jack, do you want to give a quick introduction about yourself and the company that you represent?
Absolutely. So my name is Jack Behar. I am the product owner for Merge at UXPin. And I've been in the design slash front end development space for about 25 years. I started out in graphic design and quickly got obsessed with Flash, if you can believe that. And and from that, I just got hooked and started self-learning UI and JavaScript. And I've had the opportunity to work in many environments, from corporate to freelance, for an agency many years. And for the past few years, I've been working with UXPin. Now, UXPin is a company that was founded by designers, UX designers. It started out as a physical product, kind of looking at your background there with all the post-its. It was a physical product that we actually created UXs out of, physical elements that we would paste around a whiteboard. And then from there, it evolved to software, which was developed by designers, as I mentioned, UX designers, as well as, I want to say they're hybrids, right? They're UX designers, but there's this sweet spot where a UX designer is also a UI developer, and we can really jive with the concepts there. So UXPen is a full stack UX design and UI prototyping platform. Um, and yeah, I love to tell you more about it.
Now we're going to delve into that, and I think you really showed our age when you mentioned Flash, because a lot of people who are going to be watching this podcast will be like, "What the hell is Flash?"
Flash and Dreamweaver, yes,
Yeah, Flash and Dreamweaver used to be our thing.
yeah.
Jack, I'm going to take you through the top. I guess a lot of people who are going to be watching this podcast will no doubtly be using Figma, and I really wanted to start off with that. I really want to start off with what makes UXPin different to Figma from your opinion.
Okay. So let me start by saying that everything that Figma does, we do. We might have a different process, a different way of getting there. However, the capabilities that Figma has, we mirror those, but we take it a step further, where Figma is using vectors and bitmaps and such to create your designs. We are code first from the get-go. And that really allows us to leverage um, much more evolved capabilities, right? Because now we have all these code hooks that we can actually prototype and create conditional statements, variables, and all kinds of different interactions right in the tool without writing code that makes the product feel like you're creating a product. You're not just creating these pages that are going to be flipping an artboard and hope you're communicating things. You're creating full prototypes as the product is, as you expect the product to fully behave. Not just one path, but a whole interface can be tested. But we go even further than that. Right now, we're just talking about the design side of things. UXPin Merge is now where we pick up where Figma has left off. With UXPin Merge, we're able to now, after you've gone through the ideation process on the Figma-like side of the software, you then get to bring that code in. You get to bring those coded components in, or any React design system in. And now you're able to leverage the tooling that the design prototyping platform has, but you're doing it with live code. So at the end of the day, you are going to have parity, perfect one-to-one parity from what you're designing to what actually goes live. You're going to have true code handoff as dictated by the design system. So whatever your JSX is that your components generate, that is the output that UXPin gives you. I should say UXPin merge gives you. And then beyond that, it provides capabilities like Storybook for UI exploration. It generates documentation of your component system, live documentation, and it offers many tooling to centralize both designers and developers. We're bridging that gap that we know exists. So now everybody's centralized. We're communicating the same way. We're creating concepts from gray box all the way up to high fidelity, all the way up then further with live code and coded components. Yeah.
I think when we first met, and I'll give everyone some insight. We met a good while back, about 6-7 months ago, I would say, when we first initially had first contact. And in that time, I've got to, look at the software, look at what it does, mess around with it to do my research behind this podcast. And one of the key things, as you just mentioned, it's that whole thing that everyone is working in one centralized point, rather than what Figma does, which is the design, and then you do a handover, or you use dev tools to do a handover. And that's what really struck me out with UXPin. Well, not struck me out, it actually enlightened me that you are on a different path to what Figma is, because of the fact that you're all working in one centralized application, so developers and designers in one place.
Mhm.
Now, I want to get your take on this. Do you think that's what Figma lacks, in the sense of, development and designers being centralized to collaborate together?
Yeah, I do. And they've made efforts to getting closer there. But at the end of the day, we're not working with live code. We're not working with the capabilities of prototyping that we do have, and we're not working with the team collaboration tools that we offer. So they're striving to get there. It seems like they're filling a gap that they know is there. However, that has been our use case since the get-go, filling the gap, the bridge between design and development. So I think you'll find that our platform plays rather well. But let me jump in here and say that our platform is a as I mentioned, it's full stack. So you can take it from a gray box model all the way to hi-fi, true prototypes and live code. But what's really cool about that is that you don't have to use the tool from point A all the way to point Z. We have a Figma plugin that allows you to import designs. So if you're in that, uh, I call it a four kind of step process, and it's all driven by design systems, right? So there's a design system evolution where I think Figma gets you to point three, right? Where you now have a pattern library and you're hoping you have matched code and such. And we're trying to communicate and make sense of that. But now we go to step four, which is full integration. And now these toolings that provide the capability to use coded components without writing code. It's all done through the interface. As a matter of fact, we shouldn't even say it's for developers, technical designers, or just designers that want to level up, because all the documentation of every component is available there. So designers can easily reference what each property does of each component and explore. And what they're doing is they're actually understanding the concept of what a React component behaves like and what its purpose is. And by nature, the atomic design, approach. So to to get back to the question at hand, yes, they're striving to get there. We're way beyond.
Jack, I think one of the biggest things with the industry right now, there's so many things coming out, and there's so many things you have to learn, and there's so many um it just keeps piling up and piling up. And one of the biggest hesitations for people to jump onto something new is that learning curve to be an expert in using the application. Now, what would you say to people that want to start using your platform, that have come from a Figma background, to start, seeing the benefits from the get-go?
Hmm. Well, we do offer an onboarding process, which will definitely help you. We have tons of video tutorials and resources online. However, you'll find that it's very intuitive. If you are used to working with any kind of layer-based software, you're going to get it. It's essentially three palettes. You have your components, you have your depending on what side of the house you're in, right? If we're working with design, you've got your tooling, and then you click on things and you have contextual menus, right? So it's guiding you through the process of using the tool. It's rather intuitive, but as I mentioned earlier, there are a different methodology behind it. So there is new, maybe different terminology that you will see in pages versus artboards, maybe. We do have artboards as well, but you will have different terminology. But overall, it shouldn't be a hard transition.
Would you say that UXPin is more situated to companies that do have a mature design system? Because, and I'll give you my 2 cents about that. As you just mentioned, the whole thing about having a design system is a lot of work. Generally, you got to build a community. You got to make sure you have your design patterns aligned across your different products. And most companies who don't have that maturity in their design system, will tend to use Figma. Their designers go ahead and design something, and everything's kind of misaligned in design patterns and components. Now, would you say that UXPin is more positioned in a way for enterprises who have mature design systems? Yeah, from your perspective.
Right. Yes and no. So our enterprise offering allows a company who has a full-fledged design system to integrate their code. Also, there is tooling that allows for continuous integration, meaning whenever the code is modified, we're now getting those updates in the tool itself. But we also cater with our Merge AI plan to developers and designers that do not have a design system, because we offer all these components from different libraries already there for you. So, for example, Material UI, all the components are there. And there is a theming layer that allows you to modify all the tokens that the theme will use, as well as take it further, right? There's three levels of customization. At the design system level, right, with its theme, then we can have an override theme that allows you to explore what this design system can look like based on your own tokens and specs. And then there's even a per component modification layer where you can take a button that is driven by MUI's theme and override properties and certain aspects of it to make it look exactly like how you want it to. Now, all this gets tied in with automatic documentation. So, what I'm trying to get at here is that you can come into the tool and by the end of the day have a fully fledged design system from an open source solution such as Ant Design, Tailwind. Of course, Material UI is what we consider the flagship design system here at UXPin. And yeah, from there, you're able to create your own patterns from these pieces and create your own components, style them 100% to your liking. And as you're doing this, documentation is being developed. Yeah.
Okay. I like to play devil's advocate when people come on the podcast, and it's one of the key things. Do you think that having a design system creates rigidity in some of the design or creative process? Because it's one of the key things I always speak to with designers or people who have come on the show, is that when they've had a design system that's very rigid, it doesn't allow for creativity in some sense, because the patterns are there, the components are there. And I just want to get your take. Do you think that having a full-fledged design system um, just stops that creativity coming from designers?
I don't think so. And I'm going to be real here for a minute,
Go for it.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think we're beyond that. I think design systems have really solved the problem for us. We have governance, we have design systems that are built around methodologies like Material IO and others. And the days of pushing pixels are over. Like, we don't need to reconsider what paddings and margins are. They're driven by the design system. Of course, they can be modified, but
Hmm.
once they're modified, the application itself, all the components get this information. So the way these design systems are exposed, first of all, it's an atomic format, meaning from simple to more complex components, everything is there, meaning you have all the Lego pieces to build UIs. So, in terms of composing a UI, there's no limitation. You have all the little Lego pieces to create whatever you want it to look like and behave like, right? Beyond that, the visual aspect of it, as I mentioned, is fully customizable. And these design systems, the open source ones, are built with that in mind. So if you know how to modify a theme really deep to the granular level, you can modify every aspect of every component. And in our tool, you can do that live. So you can explore what this looks like without tediously having to modify a design in Figma and so to answer your question, I don't think it cuts creativity. I think it enhances our ability to do what really matters, which is UX, research, testing, and of course accessibility.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, cool.
All
That's
these components have accessibility properties, RIA tags, and everything exposed. You can test a prototype with screen readers and all kinds of different tooling. So yeah, we're, we're concentrating more. We're allowing UX to now really concentrate more on UX versus pushing pixels that we've solved that problem.
yeah. No, agreed. I'm one of those old school people where I don't believe in the UX UI. Probably a lot of people will go against me, but I believe in specialized roles like UX designers, UI designers. But I guess that's come from an old school mentality where I came from a specialist background. But then that ties into my next question. Does your tool then warrant that wait, actually, let me rephrase this in a much more better way. Have you seen the adoption of your tool being used more by product managers than actual designers? And I'll give you my two cents on that. I've seen a lot of people where they've had full-fledged design systems to the point where a product manager has literally drawn everything for them, in a wireframe kind of aspect because the components are there. And so I would say a lot of designers have lost jobs because of that, because they don't need to go to the designer to do anything, and the product manager has gone straight to using the components from the design system to put together a feature. Now, have you seen this with your platform?
Yeah, we do have. So we cater to designers, develop UI developers, and then of course DevOps and design ops managers, and even business analysts. And yes, they are in fact utilizing the tool to some extent to create these prototypes. However, I'm going to go back to what you mentioned about design and UI as two different disciplines.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm with you 100%. I think I want to make the distinction between design and UX development, which I think are very different. Yes, you have the components there, but do you have the skill and experience to understand how hierarchy works and how to
Yes.
create a properly designed user experience? That is a skill set that takes many years of fine tuning. It's not a business analyst who is creating this. That to me would be a direction for a designer. Whereas business analysts before would use balsamic or something very
Yeah,
elementary to guide the
yeah.
designer then to the next phase. Sure, they can do that now with coded components and have direction on where they want to go with this tool, what the use cases are, but then the UX developer would take charge and fine tune those experiences based on patterns that are already created and the design language, the rules that they have set forth as a brand. So it has a purpose for business analysts and project managers, but it does not take away any kind of ownership from the designer side.
Okay. I I love that you mentioned about BA because I've noticed a lot of BAs don't really exist now because it's kind of been merged into the kind of like product management type of role. Um, and I want to get your take on it, like with your platform, because it seems like a platform where you can go and test very, very quickly. You can literally put something together and you can get it out within, I would say, seconds, or like even like, a bit of an exaggeration, but within a day you can put in a fully fledged working prototype. Now, is that something that your business has kind of like seen as one of the USPs?
Yeah. Prototyping, as you might know, there's a gap in the marketplace now,
Hmm.
and we kind of stopped really exploring that as an industry when Figma came out, and we just kind of settled with what they had, and tools like Azure and I'm losing the name here. They're no longer competitive, or they're no longer on the marketplace. So we have found that yes, it's prototyping that really sets the next level, and we're able to give you an export that is so much more usable, right? Like as you mentioned, we have iterations that can be tested. We have even integrations with tools that will do screen recordings and heat mapping and all that stuff for when you're testing your prototypes.
Okay.
So I don't want your listeners to overlook the importance of hi-fi prototyping. It's going to
Yeah.
save you tons of money, time, and you're going to have a much better product. um, Keeping product drift in mind, right? I think with Figma and other tools, it introduces product drift undoubtedly as you're
Hmm.
evolving,
Yes. Yeah.
because you don't
Um,
have a source of truth.
Enjoying the content? Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram for more updates. Your support helps us bring you even more great content. Now let's get back to our podcast.
well, that's what I think. It's one of the key things I've seen in the design process that, the SOC or source of truth, um, wherever designers are referencing from or developers are referencing from, it changes so quick. We're moving at such a quick pace. And a lot of people don't do design freezes. That's the issue that I've seen. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, you've done a design, don't touch it. You move on to the next iteration. And is that something that your platform solves in some sense of when you've done a design freeze, it's locked away and no one can really touch it other than developers?
Mhm. Yep, absolutely. We have approval processes
Yeah.
associated with every prototype that allows you and your team to essentially communicate and lock down these prototypes at certain statuses, whether we're exploring it or we're in a lock. And you can create these labels, you can create these different states for the prototype based on your processes. So when I mentioned that we were founded by um, UX designers that follow the true UX process. So a lot of these concepts and the life stages of a living product, as such as design system or the prototypes itself, is processes have been put in place based on what we know of the UX designer developers experience. And then we are now bringing processes in place that UI developers are familiar with. So, for example, version control and GitHub integration and the ability to export different branches under different prototype, a different library. So, for example, if you have a whole prototype built and your design system manager has pushed out the branch and then a dev branch, you can easily just toggle which branch you're pointing to and see how the prototype will react, right? If there are any code issues, any errors, you get indications. Maybe there's a property that is required that is not being passed. So Again, we are giving the tooling for the process, the faces of the processes. And that's why I call it a full stack tool.
Do you think that people that are going to be using your platform, I'm talking from a design perspective, that they will then have to start to know some basis of code in order to really utilize the platform? Or would it be the case that they can still use the platform just being a designer, meaning that they don't need to know code, they don't need to know CSS, they don't need to know HTML or anything like that?
Yep. So that is the case. You do not need to know code. You just need to understand the concept of a coded component. Understand
Okay.
that we're working with properties, which is no different than parameters or props or whatever you want to call them in any tool, any kind of, you're adding a radius, you're changing a property. You're adding a background color, you're changing a property. The thing is that our tool exposes the properties that the component has been coded to, capable of parsing and utilizing. So that takes it way beyond just design. It also touches on functionality because these properties allow, for example, a tab to be, just by clicking a collection of tabs, to either be scrollable tabs or centered tabs or full width tabs, just by changing a drop down. So the exploration aspect now becomes a lot easier.
Okay. Jack, I think it's one of the key things. People are going to be watching this show and they're going to be like, well, what does this tool even look like? Do you want to give a quick demo? And, just so everyone knows, I'm not affiliated to UXPin at all. I'm one of them people that likes to see that there are better ways. Not even, okay, I wouldn't say better ways. I always look to find tools that can do the same job. So I want to make sure that when people are watching the podcast, I'm not affiliated to UXPin, but what I am attuned to is finding that there are different tools out there and there are different ways of doing the same thing. And I don't believe that you should always be set on one tool. So Jack, do you just want to give a quick demo on the tool so that people that are watching this podcast can see how it operates?
Yeah, absolutely. Give me 1 second here now.
Yeah, this is going to be the technical bit. We're going to be sharing screens, so just bear with me. Do you want me to sing Kumbaya or anything, or?
It depends. Is that something you'd like to do? I mean, that's like you jumped right into that. Okay. I'm sharing my screen. Is that fair on your end?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, great. So I'll try to keep it to the features that are really going to stand out for you guys. But of course, here I am in my dashboard and I'm inside of a project already. I'm going to go ahead and create a prototype. Now, what I like to do is show you both sides of the house and obviously touch in on the processes and the evolution of it. So we'll start out on the design side of things. UXPin. As I mentioned, UXPin is the design side of things, and UXPin Merge, which is built into the tool, is now that fourth step of having a fully integrated design system. So we'll start simply. You have your pages here, which can also be referenced as artboards and seen as artboards. We have our layers. And then we have our design system where we get to document our tokens, our typography, assign assets, even define grids, and the compositions, the components that you're actually creating from scratch, right? So as I mentioned, this is the design side of things. And you can see our tooling here on the right, on the left. And it has pretty much the elements that you would expect this a design tool to have. When I click in any of these components, you can see we can modify any of those properties, such as radiuses and so forth. But we also, as I mentioned, our strength is in interactions. So I'm going to create just a simple button right now. I'm just going to throw a box here and call it button. And of course, I can give this any kind of properties I wish. We'll just change the colors here. We'll change the fill to a red. And of course, let's give it a radius of 30. And now we can say we have a simple, ugly button at this point. So we'll call it something like this. So as you can see here in our layers, what we've been doing is this is just a box. There's nothing much here. But what I like to do now is show you how we can create states to add functionality, right? So I'm going to right click and say add state, and I'm going to call this state hover. And now I'm going to change the properties of hover. Maybe we'll go with pink and change this to a bold. So now I have two states. So with these states now, I can use interactions by clicking on the button and tapping on our interactions. So interactions work on three bases. We have our trigger. As I mentioned, all that you're laying down on the page is code. So we do have all these events that it's able to parse. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go while hovering, set state, and we're going to now select that box. So we have triggers, conditions, which allow you to test different variables on the pages, values, even write JavaScript if you wish. But we're going to forego on the conditions, and then we're going to go right to the next step, which is the actions. We're going to say set state. In this case, now it will pull up all the elements on the canvas that have state, and we'll say box, and we're going to say hover. We have some animation settings here. And now we have a button that has functionality built in. When I go preview and simulate, you can now see that behavior is there. And if I go to get code, I can now select that button. And since we are in the ideation stage, this has not been built, right? This is not a built component. We are giving you the redlining, any kind of assets, and then, of course, the two states with their different colors and the different information you need.
Jack, I think your screen's frozen at the moment. Has the prototype loaded or?
Oh, yeah, might not be sharing that tab as well. Hold on 1 second.
So when you hit that simulation button, it opened up a new tab, kind of like a browser tab, I guess.
It did, yes. And I'd love to share that with you.
That's totally fine. I think
here.
I think I could definitely take your word in it. I think you just showed within seconds how to create a interaction within seconds. You know, normally from a design system or from Figma, you would have to make sure those how should you say, different states are in a symbol or an asset, and you would have to make sure that, you know, you have to put the interaction trigger on, like on click, on hover, etc., and start dragging the interactions to the different assets. And I think you just showed that within seconds how to build that cleanly. So I'm very, very impressed with that.
Yeah.
If you do get a chance to show me, do you want to show the so this is the actual simulation, yeah?
Yeah, so we're now in the this is what I was trying to show here. We have
Wow.
you now
Yeah.
have the simulation working. When I go
Uh-huh.
to get code, I can select that component. And of course, you have all the redlining tools and everything you need.
Yeah.
But since we're in the ideation step, what we're doing here is providing you all the CSS that you might need and all the, if there were, you know, if this was more advanced, we'd have assets and different things to provide you
Wow.
depending on what it is, right? We got the CSS code and pretty much everything that a developer would need to recreate this experience.
So even so say for instance that the other component that's got a heart in it, all those assets would also be available in the component. So the heart, the magnifying glass, the hamburger, the three dots, all of those kind of like imagery assets are available for the developers as well.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
As
Wow.
well as fonts. If we have the ability to upload fonts as well, and even fonts will be provided.
Wow. That's a brilliant demo. Like as mentioned, I think when you showed me the stuff before when we kind of met. Yeah, you showed me merge and how that kind of process takes in place. And so that's why I mean, you can stop sharing your screen, Jack. I want to get your kind of like thoughts about this. What is the plan with UXPin within the industry? I mean, Figma at the moment is the market leader, but it will never, we always thought that Photoshop would be the market leader. Then Sketch came about, then InVision came about, and then Figma came about. And I guess my 2 cents on this is, what is the plan for UXPin in the upcoming years?
Mm-hmm. So UXPin, and we still haven't seen the merge side of it, but our plan is to continue growing the merge side of it to mirror the experience that designers have in Figma. So whereas right now it could be a little intimidating for designers to jump in there and use coded components just because it's different methodology, we are continuing to enhance the UX of the tool itself as well as the offering. So for example, you mentioned designers not having to know CSS and such. Well, they don't, because we have tooling that translates all that. We're going to continue growing in that direction where the UI development side of it will become even more user friendly for designers, and blurring those lines of the disciplines allow designers to level up and now understand more of the programmatical like approach, which I think is very important. I think the days of just being able to design, with the tools and AI and everything that we currently have now, we've really reached that place where designers should level up to understand
Yeah.
code.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean to code, but to understand what code is, how it even, what it represents in a UI, right?
Yeah.
To be able to scope out, that's a component. Those properties have been changed, but that's only, understanding that we're working with a chunk of code for every button. It's just
Yeah.
one button. And then from there, you're. Mhm.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head with that. I think a lot of designers, and even, I took into account on why I went into development when I was a designer, was designers don't know the level of effort that goes into coding, and like moving a button from one place to another, or just changing the border ranges does have a lot of technical requirements. And I think your platform does a good job in really emphasizing that. In some sense, when you break a design pattern, it will break across, multiple platforms, across multiple components, and it kind of gives them guardrails in order to operate in a, how should you say, development manner per se. Would you
Mhm.
say that's the right statement?
Yep, that's exactly the right statement. Let's look at the big picture, what we're creating here, a digital product. Let's understand those processes. Let's be able to communicate and use the same jargon between the disciplines and departments. Or if you're a single person powerhouse, you can own that whole process. And what going back to where we see ourselves going now is enhancing these processes with AI. So
Okay.
uh-huh. So at every stage of the process, let's say you're exploring theming, you can, through an AI prompt, actually give it the feel, talk to it, and say, I'm looking, I'm creating a punk rock band website or something, given specs, and have it give you, these results that you can iterate with it, not replace your job, but help you in each stage of the process. So that is where we will continue evolving. We currently do have AI offerings. You can do anything from creating patterns to a whole prototype. You can actually take balsamic screenshots or any kind of gray box model and say, hey, create a MUI grid out of this. Give me the structure for
Wow.
the MUI grid. Create themes, as I mentioned, and even the ability to break a coded component from code and have it
Hmm.
go back to that initial design stage with those native elements that we just looked at, right? In UXPin Classic. And then
Wow.
have the AI then take that and recreate it in code because it understands your design system. So that is where we're going to be focusing on mostly, as well as continue growing adoption. Adoption has been hard.
Yes, that was going to be my biggest question. My last question I wanted to really end it up on was the adoption strategy is always the hardest in any design system. You know, and I'll always quote a person who taught me about this. His name is Davey Fung, very good design system expert. And he devised a strategy called micro adoption, where even like micro adoption on the design system from a designer needs an adoption strategy, needs some form of level of micro adoption. You have your beginner adoption all the way to an advanced adoption. Now, that's what I wanted to end this kind of podcast on with. How do you help companies adhere to an adoption strategy to bring UXPin in?
Mhm. So we pride ourselves in, again, we were built by the community, and we understand that there's never a catch-all, right? Processes are so different across all kinds of companies. So we pride ourselves on giving you like a white glove onboarding experience. You immediately get assigned an account manager representative. We provide any kind of training for your companies. We'll do workshops. Of course, we have a robust documentation video section. But what we need to do now is create community. Um, what we find is that people are ultimately not happy with Figma. It's what
Mhm.
there is, but it's the industry standard. I get it, but it's not perfect. It's not even great. And what we're doing here is we need to introduce this further. However, Figma's marketing and their power is a challenge to get in front of the right set of people, right? So we're growing community. We're hoping to get influencers more involved, as well as allowing our clients to drive the product. Anything that makes its way into the product is driven by our clients. If there's a gap, you come to us, you come to your designated account manager. Hey, this is a process we'd like to take on. We evaluate, we work with you, we finalize the approach. If it makes sense as a platform item, we bring it in, we put it into the roadmap. There is nothing we do just out of, we think this is what we need, right? We let you guys drive it.
Do you run into because that's one of the biggest issues in product roadmaps that are kind of driven by client requirements. It's like these ad hoc requirements that come in from various different high paying clients always causes a rift in backlog preparation or roadmap preparations because they're building specifically for that one client. Now, I want to get your take on that. Is that something that happens, or is it something that when you have a client requirement, you speak to your customer base and see if that's something that is needed?
It is the case, but with our enterprise offering, we do go beyond, right? And
Okay.
let's say there is a VIP client, a big, multi-department, many seat client, and they do have a specific process that they want to bring in. It might just be for that specific client that we're bringing a feature in. Anything that makes it into the actual open source offering, any of the non-enterprise solutions does go through a full review, and we rank the requests. We've been tracking all the requests, and based on,
Okay.
we get flagged on how many requests have been around this theme, and then we start fine tuning that. So yeah, it doesn't really affect the roadmap as a platform, you know. It kind of guides it, but we do take pride in our enterprise clients to be able to offer yet more more requests, to accommodate more requests, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I bring this up because I speak to a lot of people who do bring design ops aligned into their company. And one of the biggest issues we try and deal with, so I'm going to do some product placement. And one of the big things that we always try and deal with is those ad hoc customer requests. That does mess up some of the roadmap planning that we do help product managers with in, getting some streamlined workflows or just a streamlined roadmap in place. So no, I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad that you brought up, honestly, that, we're working with enterprise, and it's the case. It's the people who do pay the money that you do have to cater for. But I think one of the key things that you just mentioned that resonates with me is that you do bring those clients you do bring those requests back down to the main product, and then you do validate them in some way before bring them in. Jack, I guess I want to leave the floor open to you, because I would love people to, have a look at the software and also mess around with it. So I was wondering, I'll give you the last 5 minutes to kind of speak to the audience and say whatever you want, and to try and get your software out there, because I do like, as I mentioned before, I do like for us designers or our design community to have a plethora of tool sets that they can use and not just be subjugated to just one. So yeah, the floor's open for you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. This has been great to actually communicate with somebody that understands the whole gamut of our industry. Now, to you watching, I want to invite you to give us a shot. I mean, Figma is the king, right? But we're a hidden gem that I think people are starting to take note of. So just visit us at UXPin.com, start a trial. It's a 14-day trial. You can also email hello@uxpin.com with any kind of questions, or me directly, jack@uxpin.com. And what I'd love to do is show you around the system and explore what we kind of didn't today, which, obviously we have an hour here, but to show you the next level of evolution in our processes. You're stuck at level 3. Let's go to level 4 with UXPin and Merge, and I'd be happy to guide you along. If you have your own design system and you want to centralize design and development, this is the tool for you. I'm here at your service. So thank you again.
Nice one, Jack. Yeah, as Jack mentioned, we'll put all his details in the show description so you can reach out to him. And yeah, please fire him as much questions, because he's definitely one to answer anything you throw at him. He's got a lot of knowledge there, definitely within UXPin. So, I would love to see how things evolve over this year. It's been a very interesting talk. Again, it took us a while to get it all formulated and get you down here. But it's been an absolute pleasure and an eye-opener to see that there is somebody challenging Figma out there. Again, I'm one of them people who says we shouldn't be just using one thing. We should have an arsenal of different things that are at our fingertips. And I think UXPin does answer a lot of the issues that I see within the design process, with development, with handover, with documentation. It's one of the biggest overheads in our design process per se. And I think to have that all cut down and to have it all centralized in one point is where I think UXPin does accelerate. So
Thank you.
Cool. Jack, definitely we'll touch base in a year's time and see how it's gone, and we'd love to have you back on the show again. So
anytime, it's my pleasure.